to yours. Welcome to EMS at Sea Level. Today I'm joined by Jeff Benck. Jeff is the CEO of Benchmark. Jeff, before we get into the questions, give me a quick introduction to yourself and your background and some kind of high-level information about Benchmark.
Sure. I joined Benchmark about 18 months ago as the new CEO. I spent most of my career in the industry at OEM manufacturers as a product developer and senior leader in a number of companies that actually had outsourced contract manufacturing. So I look more like a customer of Benchmark than the typical executive who spent his whole career in the outsourced manufacturing. So I joined, and I'd spent 20 years of my career at IBM and worked at a number of other networking and storage companies. So deep experience on developing products and creating products, but not as much time in manufacturing. So as I've joined Benchmark, Benchmark has been going through a journey and really shifting from just straight on manufacturing and helping people manufacture products. We've taken on more of the engineering work and developing tests in some case, helping with design for manufacturability, but also bringing technology to the table and doing more joint development with our customers. And that's what excited me about joining the Benchmark team, given my experience as an OEM and continuing down this journey that Benchmark's been on.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating, Jeff. And I love the idea of appointing a CEO from the kind of customer environment, because you take a look at it in terms of what do I need to get from this business as a customer? What's important to me? What's driving me? And we all know that EMS is a 40-year-old business model that is going through a big revolution now, is going through a change, and voice of customer is a huge part of that. What I wanted to start with is the elephant in the room, the pandemic. It's the reason that we're doing this virtually. It's the reason that we don't get to go out for a beer afterwards or have lunch together. How's it been? What's the process been like? You've been at this for 6 months now.
Yeah, it's no question, very challenging environment. Obviously, we're first and foremost focused on protecting our employees. And we're a little bit unique, when a lot of folks went virtual and went online with their whole team, we didn't have that ability, right? Because if you think about what we do, we actually have to have people in our factories to build products to support our customers. So where we had knowledge workers that could be remote, which maybe was about 20% of the company, we went virtual, but we still had to have folks come in and, produce for our customers. So key focused on doing the right thing for employees, followed right behind that, how do we take care of customers? And then also, how do we protect the communities that we live in? So that's really been where the focus has been. We, Benchmark, in this transition that we've been making, we've really went after high value markets with a lot of complexity, where there's really stuff that we can cut our teeth on and help customers innovate. And so because of that, we tend to be in highly regulated, if you think about the defense industry, we're actually helping protect the country and other countries. So, it's not something that stops in a pandemic, right? We're being required by the government to produce some of the products we've developed. Same thing on the medical side, right? We're building products that help fight the fight to beat off this horrible disease. So we really, had our operations around the world that we've kept open through this. And we've had to take time to make sure we were following all the protocols, and we stay close to the WHO and to the CDC and to local and restrictions and regulations in the communities that we operate. But we've been able to work through it, and we've been able to continue to produce and keep delivering for our customers in what's been a very dynamic environment, as you know.
Yeah, hugely dynamic environment. And you mentioned that global footprint and different regulations, and the pandemic has been impacting different countries at different times, different speeds. You know, where I am in Australia, we're just coming out of the second wave, and we're in a pretty severe lockdown. And I look at what's happening in Europe as they're going into a second wave. Just so the viewers understand, talk me a little bit through Benchmark's footprint, so we understand where your facilities and your distribution and manufacturing is, but also how the impact's been different in different countries.
Yeah, I think that's a great question because I think it has varied by region quite dramatically. We do have only one facility in China, and as you can imagine, that facility got hit first at the very beginning of the year and even at the end of last year, and it was shut down for several weeks. And we had some disruption there. We worked through that, and I think that team showed a lot of resilience in managing through what was the epicenter. Although we're quite a ways from Wuhan, so it's we were an 8-hour drive, so it wasn't like we were in the middle of where this started. But China locked down pretty heavily, so we dealt with that. We are a global company. We have facilities in Thailand, a couple facilities in Thailand, a couple in Penang, Malaysia. We've got facilities in Romania as well as the Netherlands. And then we've got a quite large footprint in the U.S. Across the country, along with a couple facilities in Mexico. So what we saw by region varied, exactly like you said. Started with China being pretty disrupted. Last quarter, in the second quarter, which was our June quarter, we saw Penang, Malaysia, kind of get locked down, and Thailand was a little restricted. And then it kind of moved, and the U.S. became more disrupted. We have a few facilities in California, and there was a lot of shelters in place going on. So during the whole process, as I mentioned, being a critical infrastructure provider, we, had in some cases to demonstrate what we were building was critical. So, we had to work through all the regulations and approvals, share with them what we're doing in terms of keeping people safe and the protocols for cleanliness, for social distancing. And we've stepped through that in our facilities, both internationally and domestic. The one area that we still have some folks staying at home because of the high risk nature is Mexico. Mexico's probably ramped a little late, unfortunately, in this event and this pandemic we're going through, and they're still seeing a surge in cases. And so we're, while I'd say around the world, we're largely operating at pre-COVID kind of productivity levels. When I look at Mexico, we're still in that, 80 to 90%, where we still got some at-risk folks that we've asked to stay home and really meeting with also the government regulations there.
Yeah, and I think Mexico is really interesting. I know, for me, it's a really important region. I think it's going to become more important as people look to shift some of that supply chain dependency out of Asia and China specifically. And actually, I was talking to the Minister of Economic Development for Jalisco earlier this week on that topic. So there's a lot going on there. You mentioned, very importantly, taking care of the health of your staff. The one element of that is their mental health. It's a super stressful time for staff. For me, it's been a time for leaders to really step up and stand up and be counted. How have you had to adapt to that? I mean, people want information as quickly as possible. It's, even though they can't walk in through your door, they want the door to be open, and they want to be able to, they want to feel comfortable, they want to feel safe. How have you changed the way you communicate with your team?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I totally agree with you that this is the time where, leaders really have to lead from the front. And I think it comes down to communication. It's so critical that as senior leaders that we, people, everyone's scared. They don't know what the future holds and where we're going. And we actually, in the middle of this, performed a survey where we surveyed our own employees about, are we doing the right things for cleanliness? Are we doing the right things for social distancing? Do you feel safe? Our facilities, we believe, are the safest place for our employees to be when they're not at home, safer than a restaurant. I mean, we really are, everything from temperature checks when you come in. We actually ask them to fill out a health survey to say, hey, has anyone around you been exposed? Not unlike, when I went to see my doctor here, they asked us to step through that. We have similar protocols. But what we found is in the survey, first off, when you survey, we have more than 10,000 employees, and when you get 75% response on that population, you realize, wow, people want an avenue to share feedback. And while they said, hey, we felt good about what they're doing, they were concerned about, hey, how's the health of the company, and how are we doing, and how are our customers doing? We're worried about our customers. So I find that we had to go multimodal, where I'm sending out a regular update about how the company's doing through email every 2 weeks. I'm having all hands. When we go through a quarter, we might have 1 or 2 all hands during the quarter. Normally I do 1 call and record it. We did multiple, where I did a late call with Asia and a morning call with Europe, and basically did it multiple times because it was that important to kind of keep that communication line open. And it doesn't stop with me. I've asked my staff to all, engage with their teams and make sure that everyone's doing well. But to your point on the mental health, the other thing that I found in my own staff meeting, for the beginning, the first couple of weeks of the pandemic, we had staff meetings that were a few hours long, but they were calls. And I just said, look, we got to get on video. Like, I want to see all of your faces. We're going to be on 1 call a week that's 3 hours long, and I want to make sure everyone's, and everyone's like, well, I have my hair down, I didn't shave, and I'm like, I don't care. I don't care if you put makeup on, I don't care if you comb your hair, I don't care if you're growing a beard. I just want to see your face. And part of that was, just like making sure that, wow, Joe doesn't look good, or Sue looks like she's kind of down today, and what's their mental health? And you can't always get that just through voice. And so that's another tool that I then said, cascaded that to my direct reports and said, okay, now you're doing video staff meetings too, right? And just, making sure that we check in with folks on that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely huge, Jeff. And I think, when I look at stuff like that, and I look at a lot of things that have changed in our work-life balance and in our home life, some things have improved, like open, honest communication at that company level, collaboration between partners that maybe didn't collaborate before. I think that's been really interesting. And I can imagine once this thing's over and it's behind us, some of your staff are going to come back and say, hey, Jeff, that was great. We should do that on a regular basis. We need this we need this constant communication. As you look at the kind of short, medium, and long term, what big changes do you see in the business? What changes have you had to make for you in terms of your strategy? And what are you thinking 2021 is going to look like?
Yeah, so I think some things changed, the whole digital revolution. Everyone's, gotten more comfortable with being remote and where we can do it. I've been impressed with how well the team has done at doing plant and facility tours with video and not requiring people to fly in, and how much we've been able to do without getting on a plane. I've done a number of investor conferences that have worked quite well, where I normally would have flown to New York one day and had the meetings all day one day and then flown back maybe late that night, killing 2 or 3 days. Now I'm more productive. I'm able to spend, a good 7 hours and get through that. And the same kind of thing I see in our facilities. So I think, we'll probably travel less, although given what we do need to get people here and be in front of customers. And I'm itching for that. I'm having a lot of customer dialogues that are not in person, and I see that kind of coming back. But as it relates to the pandemic, I think in the beginning it was like kind of crisis mode, right? How do we make sure that we're protecting cash and that we're doing the right things for longevity long term. We're now in this transition phase, right, where we know the company's doing well, even in the tough environment. Yes, we've got demand that's off in some customers, but then we built some COVID products like ventilators that are, demand is way up. So we see certain sectors like medical, semi-cap, the defense sector that's held up really well. But then there are other areas like aerospace that's quite down, and I don't see that changing dramatically in 21. One of the tougher things to your question is I'm not quite sure yet what the macro environment looks like in 21. And, we're all hoping for a vaccine, and we hope that maybe by the first quarter, we at least see a path to normalcy. I think it's going to be a bumpy first half of next year. And I think that we need to prepare for a macro environment that may not be fully on the path to stronger recovery. Certainly, we do expect that, we're getting better about managing it. Certainly, doctors and hospitals, they're doing better with treating people, and the standard of care is improved dramatically, and then also having the therapeutics and some of the solutions, which frankly we're happy to help with. We're working with one customer right now that's building a rapid DNA, their rapid COVID tester that gets a result in less, in an hour's time instead of overnight, and so that's exciting that we can, help produce a product like that can change, how we operate in the new year. But as far as the company goes, we've been on a strategy to add more value to customers, not just help them build products, but continue to help them be an innovation partner, be a trusted collaboration, partner that they rely on to produce a product that maybe they didn't really think they could do on their own. And I see that continuing. I also think there's a couple trends that relate to EMS. One is, I think in tough economic times, people really step back and say, what's our core competency? And what are we really good at? And maybe we're good at listening to customers, understanding customer needs, and then developing solutions or products to go address that. But maybe manufacturing that product is really not where we're the best, or maybe we could be more cost-effective relying on a partner. So I think you're going to continue to see this trend, particularly in the high-value markets we deal in, where there'll be more reliance on outsourced manufacturing, even outsourcing some of the engineering. Maybe it's test development, maybe it's designed for manufacturability, but it might even be, some of the real product development that they look to lean on us. And so I think that plays to our strategy. It plays to us moving up the food chain and not just being a manufacturer, but being a collaboration, innovation partner. And I think, we'll continue to push on that as we think about 21. Maybe the one other trend that I might point to is, we have a very large footprint in the U.S. for manufacturing, more than some of our competitors. 40% of our global footprint is in the U.S. I think it's in vogue to manufacture in the U.S. again. And some of that has to do with tariffs. Some of it has to do with highly regulated industries like defense. But even in the medical segment, I hear customers say, I need an FDA-approved product or manufacturer, but I'd like to manufacture regionally, closer to where my customers are. I'd like to do more of it in the U.S. and reduce the risk there. So I think that's a trend that I think we'll also see exploited in 20.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you there. And I think there's a bit of a rebalance going on in terms of global manufacturing. Interesting that we're in pre-election season, and I wouldn't expect you to comment politically on either candidate, but I feel like incentives need to be very thoughtful of what manufacturers need. And I think one of the topics I wanted to touch on with you is that idea of digital transformation and how that's accelerating through this crisis. But I do feel that if incentives were more around digital transformation, that would help the US perhaps more than some of the protectionist policies that are out there. Feel free to ignore the political side, but on the digital transformation, is that something that's a key part of your strategy?
Yeah, I mean, as I kind of touched on, this how overnight I think everyone sort of had to deal with, how does the digital transformation affect you? I mean, obviously, we produce a wide variety of products across industries. So, we're not necessarily delivering all of the infrastructure needed for that. We've certainly seen strength in high performance computing and how that might play into what's going on in data centers around the world. I think for us, though, it's more how people innovate and how they interact and the importance of the social media and how do you make decisions and even buying behaviors. I think even for EMS, that's changing and how people think about that. So certainly we speak quite a bit to the politicians around the world about the need for incenting business. I'm probably as focused on what do we do to make sure that the environments we operate are business friendly, maybe not purely focused on necessarily the digital transformation piece of it, but just that some of the policies and things that we're doing. I mean, we're operating in an environment right now which is unknown to all of us, and we've tried to really make sure, if an employee comes down with COVID, even if they've contracted it outside of our facilities, that we step up to the healthcare support and we cover 100% of the costs and things like that. But those are areas where, government, I think, can help, with incentives and support for that and ensuring that we can continue to operate without such legal risk that, we don't want to, continue to operate and be as benevolent as we've tried to be in that. So those are certainly some of the focus items for us as it relates to
Yeah.
this.
And when you look at 2021 and you look at getting more involved in that value chain, do you see your own digital transformation as being important to that? Automation in the factories, the way you're managing your supply chain with greater visibility, solutions like AI, robotics, all those kind of things. Is that a key part of your strategy going forward? And does COVID accelerate that because you need the transparency, or does it slow it because you need to hang on to your cash?
No, it's funny. When you asked the question earlier, I wasn't thinking of it in that context, but I'm glad you kind of made that linkage for me, because I think as you think about Industry 4.0, as I might respond to it more with we're very vested in that. There is more automation that we're deploying, and we've kind of created a center of competency in our Thailand facility for automation, and we're actually expanding that team in this environment to deploy that strategy more globally. And I think we are going to see speed up on that. A couple reasons. One is social distancing, right? And if you want to keep people apart in the factory, then how do you automate something that might allow you not to have folks standing 5 feet apart, right? So that's one motivation for that. I think also in some, it's sometimes cost effective. And it's not for us a way to reduce headcount. It's a way to take the repetitious, boring activities that are subject to risk of quality escapes and really getting rid of that. And so that's where we assess a particular factory and decide, okay, what can we do here to more automate things and make it, safer and more reliable to do what we do. On the supply chain side, I mean, one of the things that when I joined the company, Benchmark had grown through a ton of acquisitions over the years. And I was sort of looking at it and going, how do I reintegrate the company a bit? And how do I do some investment to improve our centralized tools and then deploy those globally? So, frankly, sometimes you have to invest to save money. And so, my task has been how do I make sure we're more operationally efficient but I also recognize we have to invest to do that, whether that's HR tools, whether that's, I see an opportunity for artificial intelligence and automation in things like, collecting bills from customers, right? And accounts receivable, accounts payable. There's an opportunity for RPA there, which is a big theme in the industry, and an opportunity for us. So we're fortunate, given the cash position we have, and the fact that we're a profitable entity, and we've been that for many, many years, that we can afford to invest. And I hate to waste a good crisis to look at something that was a sacred cow and say, look, we're going to go disrupt this and we're going to do it differently. And if we've got to invest a little bit in this downturn to come out the other side and grow faster, then now's the time to do it. And that's sort of how we're thinking about it. That's the mindset.
Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense. And we are in a period of disruption, and there's no doubt the pandemic didn't create the need for digital transformation or any of those changes, but it certainly is an accelerant, and it's shone a light on those models that are maybe a little bit more analog and don't have the visibility that you need. So I think and I think what's really important of what you said is it's not just about what goes on in the factories, it's transforming those business processes like accounts, like HR and all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
On the lighter side, Jeff, tough times for executives like you and I that are used to pressing the flesh and taking customers out for a beer and spending some time with people. You're stuck at home, all your favorite restaurants or some of your favorite restaurants will be shut. What have you been doing to stay sane? Have you been binging on Netflix shows, or what have you been doing?
It's interesting because I moved to Phoenix, with the new role, and glad to be here with the team at headquarters. But I ended up, embarking on building a new home, and I don't know why I took that on, but it's certainly been a pleasant distraction, I think, in the middle of this. And so, HD TV is on a lot, with a lot of the the whole remodel and all that. Just trying to get ideas on what we want to implement in the new place, and it's been a distraction when I'm not working. And I think it's interesting you brought that up before. We're all on a ton of video calls and all that, and really I'm shifting a little bit with my team to say, look, we're going to have no fly zones on Friday afternoons. We're not going to allow any Zoom or any Teams calls, because folks need think time. They need downtime. Where just unfortunately, when you're working remote, because we do have a number of folks that are remote, that that whole thing about take a step for dinner, a step away, but I'm back online from 7 to 10 at night, and it just Saturdays blur into Fridays, and so for our own mental health, and I'm trying to lead by example, it's important we step away. I think we're better for it. I've been encouraging my staff. There's a lot more long weekends, maybe not taking a week to fly to some island somewhere, but I think people are trying to, I know my folks, we're encouraging them to step away and spend time with friends and family in their little clusters, right, where they're safe. But yeah, so we've been doing some of that, some Netflix watching too, for sure. But that's what's going on with me.
Good stuff. And whilst you've been building your home, have you managed to pick up a nail gun and do some manual stuff, or has it been pretty much planning?
Yeah, I think my manual stuff has been more deciding what I don't want to take with me to the new house and all that. Thankfully, I've got a builder that's a general contractor who's handled all that. I do like dabbling in some hands-on stuff. I'm a mechanical engineer by degree, so I can't help but tinker a little bit. But I've learned that it's not the most efficient way to get things done. Better focused at Benchmark and leave the hammer and nails to my contractor.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But yeah, I'm the same as you. I'm an engineering graduate, and you can't help but want to get your hands on some of the tools and have a go. Before we go, and as kind of part of a wrap up, what advice, based on what you've learned, would you give to your peers in the industry?
Well, we started talking earlier about communication. I just think communicating with your teams, communicating with customers, communicating with, the extended organization is so critical, particularly in a time where there's so much uncertainty. The other thing I would say is we can't forget that we're all dealing with the stress, and I get worried at times and I get concerned, but I guess I'm an eternal optimist. But when I think about the senior executives, we are the purveyors of hope. And I think it's really important that we're able to talk about what does the world look like beyond this, and there will be an end to this. The world may never be the same, and we may stop traveling as much or engaging customers differently. But I think we're going to find that human contact, it's in our species, right? You're not going to stop that, and there's such a thirst for that. So I would just say, like, look, it's important that we can, sort of paint a picture of what that future state might look like, and allow people to say, hey, we're making progress. We're getting there every day. And, how do we encourage that people stay optimistic? And, as people are impacted, which is going to invariably happen, we're helping them transition if need be. And then for the team that's there, it's just like you mentioned earlier also, just straight talk and being genuine, showing humility, particularly with this whole, and I know it's become a global thing, but the whole Black Lives Matter, it's just such a crazy time. And when you lay that on top of the pandemic, it's really an opportunity to stand back and reflect on what we're doing and how can we be better, not only as a company, but as individuals and as a community. And that's where I want to put my energy as we think about, closing in on the end of 2020 here, and hopefully closing down a chapter of a year we want to just forget. But I know for myself, I'm really excited about what the future holds. Some might say, well, it can't get worse, but I really do think that we'll get through it and we'll be better for it. And it'll be exciting times ahead.
Yeah, and Jeff, you're absolutely right. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I think that's absolutely the case here. And I love that, pretty much every answer you've given me, you put your biggest asset in the center of your answer, and that's your people, and taking good care of them. And that comes from, as you say, open and honest communication, and having the channels for collaboration and thinking about what their week looks like. And I think that's hugely valuable. Jeff, I've really enjoyed today. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for everybody that's watched EMS at Sea Level again. And we'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the time.